Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's about 1:30, so we're going to get started. I'm Lainey Castle from the ALA Public Programs Office. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar, which is part of the ALA Great Stories Club and made possible by a generous grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Today's webinar will provide some examples of supplemental programming activities for our Great Stories Club empathy theme grantees. After we have wrapped up the workshop last fall, several people shared that they were still looking for this kind of support. So I'm happy to introduce two library project directors who have hosted the Empathy series and are here to share the programming that they offered. This session is going to be recorded and available for offline viewing later this week. Before we get started, here are a few instructions for communication in our Zoom virtual classroom. If you have a technical issue of any kind, please use the Q&A window that appears at the bottom of your screen to communicate with Brian Russell. Brian is providing tech support today. To send a message through Q&A, move your cursor to the bottom of the window and click on Q&A. When we move to questions at the end, everyone will have the ability to submit questions via the chat feature. You can add questions to chat anytime and we'll just take them at the end. If you happen to connect to the webinar by phone, you can also state your questions that way, again, during the Q&A period. Please just be sure to have your phone muted, however, during the presentations. And I think that's it. Thank you again for being with us, and now it's my pleasure to introduce the first of our two presenters. First, we're going to hear from Allison Dowds. Allie currently serves as the Health and Human Services Research Specialist at Boston Public Library. In this role, she curates library outreach initiatives serving marginalized populations within the Boston community. Allie has held other positions with the Boston Public Library and also served as a librarian for 5 years with the Massachusetts Department of Corrections. Allie conducted the Great Stories Club Empathy series while serving as a national advisor to the Great Stories Club, piloting the program with teens in her community back in 2017. And we're very grateful that she's here today to share her experiences with us. So for now, I will hand the floor over to you, Allie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie. I have a few slides, and I'm going to kind of just touch on a few different programming activities that I utilize to kind of make not only the books, but like the humanities discussion questions more accessible to the youth. Just a tiny, short background of the school that I worked with. I worked with an alternative middle school in Boston. It was a 6th grade class, but the students, I would say, ranged in age from around 12 all the way up to about 16 or 17. And this was a school that did have an existing partnership with the Boston Public Library, but not with me. So I was like a brand new presence in their classroom coming in to pilot this program. So my first two slides are actually going to talk a little bit about two of the activities that are on the handout that I believe is on the Great Stories Club website for supplemental activities. And then my final slide is going to be basically just like a combination of a variety of different activities I did that I felt worked with the class that I was working with. So kind of take or leave whatever I offer today. So the first one, sorry, just make sure, okay, was, so Anna May, who's the humanities scholar, she pulled up this quote and she included this in her discussion questions, and it was, "Forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past." I use this kind of both with Flight and All American Boys, and I very much broke this down to like a simple question that was, if you could change the past, would you, and why? I thought it was like really important, and this was like a journal exercise. So it was private and quiet, and then we did open it up for discussion. But I wanted it to be a journal experience because I wanted the teens to kind of feel comfortable, like having time to like really thoughtfully respond to the question. And then if they didn't want to share, that they felt that they had an outlet where they really could explore this question a little bit deeper than if we kind of like went around the room and asked everyone to respond. Obviously, I feel like this really relates to the book Flight. This whole going back to your past, being able to maybe change things, Would you do it all again? Would you not? But I thought a big part when you're talking about empathy and trying to drive home what that definition means is really thinking about how you're impacting someone else's life. And in Flight, you know, Zit's really, it's this coming of age story where he kind of learns the importance of the choices that he's made, and how they've had an effect not only on himself, but others. And when I asked this question and the teens kind of work through, you know, would you change the past? Would you change it for the better? Would you leave it as it is? Who's going to benefit if you change it? Who's losing out? A lot of them were like, no, I would not change it. And it's like, even if I've hurt somebody or I've wronged somebody, they felt that the lesson behind it or the growth behind that past was much more important than trying to right a wrong in a way. So I found that really interesting, and that seemed to be the consensus among the group. And then the way I kind of had them use the same quote and the same idea with All American Boys was I actually asked them to write alternative endings for the story. And we talked a lot about forgiveness over vengeance or retaliation. And that idea was very much woven into these alternate endings. So I think it's always good to have people kind of thinking and trying to see both sides of the coin. It's empathy in many ways. And that's what I was doing with this quote and this idea of forgiveness, vengeance, retaliation. You could honestly use this with all the books if you wanted to. The next activity, or I guess it's two separate activities, I used this at the very beginning of the program. Like I was saying, I was new to this class. These kids, they didn't know me. They had no reason to trust me. And so I didn't want to just be like, all right, open your books and now let's start discussing these like really heavy topics. And I want you to be raw and honest with me. So I wanted like a way to ease into this. And I found this idea actually online that was called the Graffiti Walk. And you can do this so many ways. We were in a classroom and we had like limited resources. So essentially what we did was you're creating this walkway where you're kind of calling out stereotypes that either have been designated to you or that you've put on somebody else. And I think that is important to do, again, both sides. We're not all innocent here. We all play a part. And so I thought it was important to be not only to talk about maybe how you feel that you've been wrongly perceived, but how have you wrongly perceived other people? If you have the opportunity to go outside, you could do this like on a sidewalk with chalk and literally just have teens start writing down whether it's names or generalizations, along a sidewalk, is again creating this walkway. The way I did it was we just had large pieces of paper and we kind of like hung them around the classroom. And then what we did was we kind of as a group, I think there's the first day there was like 7 or 8 teens in the class. So it was a smaller group. And we traveled this walkway together. And when you got to each piece of paper, I didn't just ask the person who wrote it. I also gave them the opportunity to keep it kind of anonymous. Like you didn't have to say, oh, this was my contribution to this, because I wanted everyone to kind of have this open discussion on all of these different stereotypes. And so the group kind of walked through it. We were talking about like, how does this word or how does this representation maybe make you feel? Or why did you maybe use this word? Why do you it was just, again, this, and it wasn't forced. It was like, who wants to talk about what is written down here? And I used this before reading All American Boys, which was the first book that we read. So that was day one, and it was kind of like an icebreaker. It got people talking, it got people thinking, and warmed up. And then towards the end of reading All American Boys, the second part of this, and you can do both of these, one of them, neither of them, however it makes sense. was I had them write I am statements. So taking back that narrative. So whereas the graffiti walk is kind of calling out stereotypes, these I am statements is you're kind of rejecting them, and you're saying, you know, this is my voice, this is my identity, and this is how I want to be seen. And I felt like the teens really enjoyed this activity, and they, you know, by this point we were pretty much finished the book, and they really saw the importance of, you know, somebody might see me this way, and that's because they don't know me, they don't understand me. So I want to make sure that they know who I am. And so we actually hung these around the room. They stayed up throughout the program. And I feel like it really created this tone for the rest of the class. I was with them for almost 3 months. So I was with this class for a long time. I know not everyone gets that amount of time, but it was nice to have these I am statements, you know, kind of enveloping us throughout the whole program. My last slide, so there's a bunch on here, and I'm going to give a few different examples of each. But as I was doing this, you know, I was dealing with a lot of, you know, decently wide age range here, even though, again, it was all technically 6th grade. I was also dealing with a variety of reading levels, comprehension levels. So I didn't want to just like read the book and discuss. I wanted to make sure that everyone was kind of connecting to the literature in their own way, and they were given that opportunity to connect to the books. So one of the big things, and this is just the style that the school that I worked with, how they do literacy and reading, is whenever they're reading a book, they read it together and they read it aloud. So all of these 3 books were read completely aloud by the teacher or by myself. If students wanted to read, they were more than welcome to, but I would say for 95% of the class, either myself or the teacher was doing the reading. And so read alouds really, again, helped us to reach different reading levels. I think it helped with comprehension, and it ensured that the teens were engaging with the book. I was really nervous about doing this because I'm like, they're going to fall asleep just listening to me read this book. Like, this is going to be so dry and boring. And I thought it was great. It was much more engaging, and we would stop and talk, and it just became very interactive. Another way was I used a lot of videos. So like pulling stuff up that I would look up before class on YouTube or educational websites. It kind of gave them a break from the book, but also connected the book to references in real life. So for example, in All American Boys, there's this reference to Aaron Douglas from the Harlem Renaissance. And, you know, a couple of the kids were like, you know, who is this guy? And so we would look up his art, and we watched a video on the Harlem Renaissance, you know, just again, connecting these historical events in life to the books that we were reading. I think it just helped to flesh out a lot of the themes and influence of these books. Same thing for Flight. There's one of the chapters is all about the Battle of Little Bighorn. A lot of the teens didn't know what that was. So watching historical videos on the Battle of Little Bighorn, and again, being able to have that context, I thought was really helpful. Journaling, I already kind of mentioned that with the other activity, but a lot of teens appreciated this because it gave them an opportunity for this quiet, personal reflection. We were talking about like this idea of being brave, which I think goes along with being with having empathy for others. Sometimes it's really hard to have empathy for others and to want to do that. So, you know, I would ask them, well, what does it mean to be brave? And what are examples of being brave? And they would, you know, journal, and we didn't have to share it. Again, some of the teens wanted to, whether it was just to me or it was to the whole class. I also think it gave them kind of a safe space to explore some of the themes and humanities questions, which without feeling judged or kind of put on the spot. And it really, like I have on here, it kind of prompted them to be more thoughtful in this exploration. So I thought journaling was a really good way for them to kind of dig deeper into what they were reading, because oftentimes you can read something and you quickly discuss it, but if you're not part of that discussion, you might be missing out on a lot more. And then the fourth thing I did was field trips, and I use this term pretty loosely. Field trips, and I don't mean that necessarily always having to leave the classroom. I'm sure some of you are working with teens where you cannot leave your classroom. So how do you kind of bring the outside in? If you are able to leave the classroom, obviously there's a lot more opportunity for that. With Kindred, there's a lot of talk about slave papers, and what I did was we used the National Archive to actually pull up real examples of these papers and these freedom papers. And I thought we went through like 3 or 4 of them. And so for the teens to kind of read through the language and to really see these real documents, again, I just did this on the computer and put it on I just put it on like PowerPoint. It really helped them kind of tap into like the reality behind this book that they were reading. We have Boston's Black Heritage Trail that the class actually did a field trip to, and they did it during the time that we just happened to be reading Kindred. And a lot of the students actually came back with like flyers and memorabilia that they had gotten on this heritage trail. And we're talking about like how it related to the book and how they could see similarities between the book and Boston's history. And so again, just like really going beyond these books and I feel like tapping into them on a more personal level. I think it helps to make these books stick. It helps for the themes to be explored differently. A lot of times things get missed when you're just kind of reading and then doing that blanketed discussion. So trying to find these different like niche areas that maybe hits home for, half of the class or just even one kid is really important to play into these different, like ways of learning. And so that's kind of what I was doing here with, these 4 different categories. I think it's okay to go beyond the books, and I did that a lot. The focus, there was days that we didn't even read the books. We just did activities, again, all related to them, but just kind of taking a break sometimes from that traditional read a chapter, discuss. I thought was really helpful. So that was just a few ideas of programming that I did. Obviously, I feel like I change things constantly depending on which teens were in the class, what the mood was like that day. If the mood was like pretty blah, we definitely did more interactive videos, or we got up and moved around the classroom. But if they were really into the book, like All American Boys, they didn't want to put that book down. We did a lot more reading. We flew through it. So I think it really depended on the class, the book, and the mood that day, how I incorporated the activities. So that's my part. That's all I have. So I'm going to kind of pass it off. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Celeste Felix-Taylor, manager of the South Branch Library of the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library in Toledo, Ohio. Celeste is one of our current Great Stories Club Empathy grantees, and she started hosting programs in partnership with the Mad Poets Society, also in Toledo, Ohio, last fall. Celeste graciously volunteered to share some of the great work that she has been doing to recruit teen participants, to build local coalitions and a sense of community with her readers, and to plan some supplemental programs, including intergenerational discussion events and a community social service project. And I know Celeste is also joined by a colleague, so I'll let you make that introduction, Celeste. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having us. Oh, and Happy New Year. Of course, I'm Celeste Felix-Taylor, the manager of the Great South Branch. And here is one of my greatest allies, my teen librarian, Colleen McBride. And we are excited to talk to you about our program and the great success that we are having. We began by naming our program. And so for us, because we are the South Branch, we took our name South and extended it to mean something for the youth. So it is called Successful, Outstanding Urban Teens Living Honorably. Of course, living, because that gives us the L for libraries. And so living honorably. Okay. As you see, when we first started, of course, recruitment was the #1 thing for us to ensure that we had sufficient amount of young people to develop our program with. So we immediately got together and we designed flyers promoting the reading club. We also did a lot of recruitment from area community high schools and eighth graders as well. So Colleen and I, and a lot of times just Colleen, will go to the various parent conferences, or when school first opened, they had school.
And this is a great place to get teens, because we don't have a group of teens that just stay here. But when you go out to the schools, most of the time at open houses, they're with their parents. And a lot of times we need releases signed for photos and things from the parents. So that's a great time for us to actually have the parents there to actually sign the papers. And we speak to the parents that are bringing the children, and we get them enthusiastic and happy about the program to make sure that the kids are actually going to come.
Absolutely. And then we also met with a lot of community organizations to obtain their support. One of the things that I wanted to demonstrate to the youth, that all of us in the community were supporting this program and their reading efforts. And as you see with the next, when we show you the other slides, how we did this, how great that effort has been for us. We also invited school counselors and parental liaisons to Story Club informational meetings, because the more informed that they were, the more they were able to have youth volunteer to join our program. So then the teens began signing up. We held a community forum to unveil the project. During that community forum, one of the things that happened because of the passionate way that we were discussing our program is that our community decided to give us some additional funds to provide t-shirts and other items to the youth. In particular, we decided that we wanted to hold our discussion in a family style meal. So the community gave us enough funds that in every discussion, the youth decide where we will eat from. So far we have had Olive Garden or Red Lobster, so to speak. We have a barbecue great place here called Famous Dave. And so, this is a way for both of us to sort of be an ally in this process. So they have some say in how we were doing the process. Our agency also bought 6 additional books because we started getting more youth who wanted to be involved than we have books for. So our agencies realized that this was going to be a nice endeavor, and that kids were motivated to attend. Then they would support it by buying 6 additional copies of each book. We designed the South Living campaign and developed laminated logo cards and large banner, and we will tell you later on how we use all of those. As you can see, here's our large banner on my left that is on our front entrance. So as soon as the youth are coming in, they already can see their programs being highlighted. We were able to obtain pens that light up with our logos that we provided to the kids and to the area schools. You see our logos, and that's the laminated flyer that we have, so that when youth are involved in other youth activities throughout, And we're gonna show you some of the pictures that they are taking. Everybody has one that they can take a picture in whatever activities they're doing, where they're demonstrating to us where are they living honorably, where they demonstrated the goals and the characteristic of what South program stands for. And then our t-shirts were designed with the same logo that you see on everything else, as well as in the front, our agency's name and as ALA due to the grant. And then here are our gorgeous, beautifully and handsome group. Our teens met twice a month to discuss each book grade. The first meeting is a check-in. Where are they at with the book? Were they having any difficulties with the book? Was there anything that we could do? And then at that time, they will select where we will eat from, so that the following meeting will be our family style discussions. Anything you want to say?
No.
Okay. And then because we brought everything up to our community, we asked the community to have pictures with our logos. And as you can see, the education committee from one of our schools, that's the principal holding the sign. The mayor of Toledo received his t-shirt with the name. Our district council person, who has been very, very, very supportive of us, also received a t-shirt with our logo.
And when we do these, we like the kids to see that people who are in places that they may have never thought that they can go, they come and they're supporting them, so they feel a circle, a community actually around them.
Yes. We have a great collaboration with the Toledo Zoo, and our zoo every year has a luminary display towards the fall, and at night the zoo is just beautifully highlighted with all of these animals and flowers and all that. And as soon as that program is over, they bring some of those type of things over to us. And as you can see, our youth are standing by those beautiful tigers. At night they look beautiful, all lit up. We are involved with the Ohio Commission Affairs. So once again, they too were giving, as you can see me right there, holding the logo. Everything we do is South Living for us. Our fire chief with our t-shirt. And what we wanted is the children and the young adults to know that this was a community endeavor and that we all supported what they were going to be doing. Then each of our young people were giving one of the flyers to take with them so that they could send us pictures. And as you can see, one of my teens went to Paris for the Thanksgiving holiday. And so she took the picture and sent us one back telling us bonjour from Paris. There they are in their Spanish class, and they took a picture saying we are not really living inside, in our Spanish class. And then we had the ProMedica, who is one of our biggest hospitals systems here, CEO, who was going to Beijing, and we said, would you mind taking our sign and sending back a picture? And there she is promoting South Living in Beijing. Okay. So as you can see, the youth, we are concluding the empathy series, and we're going to begin the hero series. So we wanted to have a give back project in our community, and we chose La Posada, which is our community shelter. And we collected toiletries and items that they were in need of to supply to them. Because part of empathy is to, put yourself in other people's places. And when they gave us their presentation as to how families are ending there and some of the ramification, and that some of the young people, unbeknownst to somebody else, could be someone who is staying at a shelter. And so that was, I think for myself and our team, a very gratifying and heartwarming endeavor to see us being able to be community minded, and that we are partner in keeping each other safe. We also partner with the Mayores Senior Center, which is our senior center in our area, and they gladly send each of the youth a journal for the youth to of course do some of their journaling, and they are reading the same book that we are reading now, so we can have an intergenerational discussion on the book and its meaning, and so that the young people will be able to ask, you being, let's say, a young person who is 14, 15, 16, to ask an elder who might be 65, 70, even 80, what were things like for them at that age? Because some of the issues that, as you know, that we are discussing in the reading materials, it has happened in different generations and continues to happen. And so we want them to be able to reflect, how is it now versus how was it then?
Yes, the different perspectives will really be great. One of the things that I got from our meeting with La Posada is when one of the teens asked, how do the kids that are in the school actually get to school? So that made them think on a different level, that somebody that is the same age as them, that they don't really consider them catching the bus or their parent dropping them off as a big thing, but then having to have clothing and everything like that to go to school too, and how the shelter provides it. And they don't know it could be someone that they're actually in school with that are going through this.
And so, our teens just completed their evaluations on the empathy series. And I wanted to show you some of the quotes that they provided that were truly, for me, heartwarming and heartfelt, because as you're doing this and we are facilitating the discussion, sometimes you don't know what may have been said or what we may have done that really impacts a young person. And so here's some of their reflection on some of the reading materials and discussion that we have done. And the first one saying, I think it's a very positive environment that encourages thinking and self-reflection. I wish I would have known sooner and was able to enroll at a younger age. I really enjoy the program. That one touched me because I wanted to know, the youth in the group are from 13 to about 20. And of course, I don't know which one wrote that quote, but I think to myself, what was it that we may have said that you didn't hear at 9 or 10 or 11? Because I would have wanted you to hear that, and I wanted to reinforce whatever positive message you receive, that's how we view you and see you, so that they continue to understand that they have the ability and capability in them to become anything and everything that they would like to be. The GSC Club has made me think more about our world problems and how racism is ignored.
The people that lead the group are insanely insightful and made me really think about my place in the world. Having a community of peers to keep my white butt in check is amazing. I think that is a huge statement, because the books we read, they come from every point of view. And so to see maybe yourself in that book, or the person who is sitting next to you that looks different from you in that book, and then for you to reflect and see it differently, this can actually help as when they're going out into the world. When they see things, these things will now be seen differently, and they'll have more of an opinion. They'll be able to make an educated guess because we gave them options. I'm grateful that I was led to the library because it has changed my life immensely. These books are heartbreakingly inspirational and need to be read by everyone. Those are huge statements made by people that are in their teens.
Yes. And I'm so proud that libraries such as ours are taking on such a program to deliver, this content in such a way that young people are being empowered by the messages that they have read. So, to summarize a little bit, some of the takeaways for everybody else who's doing programs is be creative. Think a little bit out of the box. Engage your community. See what we need, what you can do to allow the young people to know that no matter maybe wherever they happen to be, that they feel engaged and that they feel supported. I know with us, when, my librarian in particular, they say when she enters a building and you see our logo right there, you think, oh, wow, that is, immensely an immense statement for the young people to know that we are all working together to better them, to assist them. We provide, allow the teens to take an active role in the program process. This is extremely important because we need to have them feel that they are part of this program, not apart from. It's not about just me providing answers or just discussing the book. This is all of us together in it. And so just giving them the right to say when we meet, what food we're going to eat, have them feel like, wow, this is our program. The fact that when they come in, all of them are wearing that same t-shirt. We are now part of this program. When they can see the banners and all of these other activities that we have done, it makes them feel that they're part of this community. So make sure that you just think a little bit outside and collaborate with as many people as possible to make the program even richer. Then provide a safe outlet for teens to actively participate in their commitment to become better. We must be able at times to hear difficult things that they may or may not have either seen or done. And they need to feel safe that they can say these things in a confidential manner and in an empowering way that from there can be growth.
Oh, also when our institution, when the Toledo Library found out that we were doing this program, we were trying to figure out a way that we could talk to the teens where it would be just us and them and not everybody else, or just a private email. So the library set up a private email just for us to communicate to the teens. So all the teens gave us their emails, and we have an email, it's southliving@toledolibrary.org, where they can actually this is how we keep up with them, we communicate with them, they send us questions, and a lot of times we like to know what's going on in their lives because we try to participate in their lives. So they can send us like their schedules, if they're playing basketball, if anybody's graduating. We want them to know that we support them more than just the book club. We want them to know that we want them to succeed in life. So we try to be there and show up for things that they have, and they can always email us through the email. And some of them I've actually even give the number out and tell them we're always here, call.
Absolutely. So think outside the box to keep discussions interesting and motivating. We want the teens to continue coming, and our program has grown. We up to 21 youth, and the more, I never turn anyone away. As the other youth are telling them, oh my God, this program is interesting, or this program is fantastic, or as other parents are hearing from parents who are saying that they feel that their children or the young people are growing, then they want to also come into the program. So just think a little bit outside the box, even though the discussions are at times, extremely heavy based on the subject matter. You have to keep it in such a sense that everybody gets something from it without all of us leaving depressed because we just went through, this major issue or event that's been happening, and we didn't have a way to sort of bring them back to feeling great about who they are and to give them hope that things are interesting, that things are becoming better. So listen more while allowing the teens to speak up. Our role as the facilitators is to provide them with open-ended questions to begin the flow of discussion, and then we step a little bit back and allow them to speak. If we notice that they're not, then we once again come back also with another open-ended question to allow them to re-engage as we are taking the climate of the room to ensure that, no one is being affected deeply from what we are discussing. Okay.
And once before, we did have a team that was affected. And I love the fact that she felt comfortable enough to come to me and pull me to the side and ask, because she talked to me outside. And we go outside, she doesn't really want to talk. She just wanted to know that I was there, and she wanted a hug. So it was like I was able to actually show her that I cared.
Yes, so enjoy and celebrate teens' accomplishments. You know, tomorrow I'm gonna go see one of the youth who plays basketball. You know, Colleen at times goes to the school because they give out awards or
Award ceremonies.
yeah, and they invite us to come. You know, I want them to know, you know, we ask how school is going. If they bring us their grade cards, we post them in our backboard. You know, we celebrate who they are, where they are, and are constantly motivating them to, you know, to believe in who they are and their capabilities. So if you have any questions, Colleen and I would love to answer them for you.
Thank you both so much. It's so inspiring to hear about the work that you've been doing with your library, and thanks for sharing it with us. So we do have time for questions. If anyone has anything on their mind, questions, comments, the chat feature is at the bottom of your screen, and you can type your questions there, and we'll give you just a moment to do that. And while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I also want to thank Allie for taking the time to be with us here today. Allie is on her first week back after family leave, so this was, I know, a hard week to fit this in, and I appreciate it. Questions? I'm not seeing any typing, so I'm going to assume that people are just soaking it up and thinking about what you've shared. So I think with that, we'll conclude our session. To those of you who attended, thank you for being here. We hope your programs are going well and that this was useful for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Brian, to me, anytime with any questions or any suggestions, or also use the list to share what's working for you, what's not, what questions you still have. So thank you very much to Allie, to Celeste, and I'm sorry, I did not catch your name.
I'm Colleen McBride.
Colleen, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.